In this video session, we will further take a look at the block diagram, or also called as the discussion of the functionality of a computer. Just to give you a heads up, this is not going to be a very detailed look at all. You can think of it as flying in an aircraft 5 kilometers up in the sky and looking at a small car or a house. At that level of detail, we are going to try to understand what is a computer and what are the different components of a computer. Now, first, let me try to refresh you what exactly is a computer. A computer is basically an electronic device. Okay, it's an electronic device which basically performs 5 jobs. The first job is to accept data and or instructions as input using input devices like a keyboard, mouse, joystick, sensors, and so on. Then data for being processed or to be used requires to be stored. So the data is either stored in the hard disk, or when it is required for actual processing, it is brought to the main memory. So computer stores data in the primary and secondary memory. Primary memory is referred to as the main memory. Secondary memory is referred to as the hard disk and DVD and CD-ROM and all those things. Now all this we do so that the data can be processed by something called as the central processing unit. All of you must have heard about Intel chip or AMD chips. The lectures I am developing, and I'm actually delivering these lectures, I'm using the Asus tough gaming laptop which uses the AMD chip, not the Intel chip. So my CPU is the AMD chip. So CPU stands for central processing unit. Now once the data is processed, it has to be shown somewhere. The result of your marks card can be shown on the printer. The result of a game or the result of certain calculation can be shown on the screen. So the output is displayed using output devices like printer, monitor, and so on. The most important part of a modern computer is the central processing unit, and within that there is a unit called as the control unit. So what the control unit does is it controls and coordinates all the operations of different parts of a computer. So for you, the idea of a computer must be something like this. Okay, this is the laptop I'm using to develop your course, the Tough Gaming. It's an excellent laptop. All right, although I don't play games, I just develop your video lectures on them. This is your desktop. Okay, typically consumes more power, this consumes less power. Then this is known as a workstation, because suppose this fellow had just 4 GB of memory, this fellow may have, okay, this fellow may have 1000 GB of memory, 2000 GB of memory, and so on. It may have memory capacity unbelievably large. These are all possibly memory capacities, RAM storage, and so on. So workstations or servers are hundreds of times powerful than the simple laptop or PC I use. So most likely once you come to the college, okay, you will get a chance to connect your machine to a workstation, and this will do all the work for you, and your machine is just going to do simple basic things. Now let me talk about the block diagram of a computer. So what I will do is I will display the block diagram for you, and I will try to give you a very high level explanation about the functioning or the block diagram of a computer. So if you look at this block diagram, just try to understand the flow first. On the input side, you have devices like a keyboard or mouse. On the output side, you have devices like the printer and monitor. This is your hard disk, DVD-ROM, CD-ROM. This is something, a main memory, also called as the random access memory. Now, the arrows indicate the flow. Now, anything which is in red and a dashed line, it indicates that it basically is some control instructions. I'll tell you what is those control instructions. Anything with this blue indicates that data is flowing along those lines. So let me tell you what exactly is the functional or the block diagram of the computer. The computer basically takes in data and instructions from the input devices. They go on to the main memory. Then what the control unit does is it tries to decode, that means it tries to understand what is the meaning of the instructions, and then based on the meaning of the instructions tells, if it is a mathematical operation, tells the arithmetic and logical unit. This is ALU, stands for arithmetic and logical unit, to perform arithmetic operations. Now within this part, if you see this green part, you will see when you get the notes, this green part, dotted part, if you see here, this is actually your CPU. The three major components of your CPU are control unit, arithmetic and logic unit, and your register or computer CPU memory. The arrow, green arrow this side in both directions, indicates that there is a data flow between both the sides. Okay, this indicates there is flow only one side, because you cannot give input from output device, nor can you give output to a input device. So the arrow is like this. So once it gets an instruction, through this control lines, it will tell the arithmetic logic unit, do addition, do subtraction, do division, do multiplication, and so on. Logical operation means something is true or false, whether person is male or female. Those kind of decisions are taken in this particular unit. So what happens is, when I type a program and I keep my data, it is first stored in this secondary memory or your hard disk. Only when the program is going to be executed or run, that program and data is taken from the secondary disk and put onto the main memory. And this is much bigger. Assume this is a size 10, this will be size 2, this will be 0.01. It will be very small. So what happens is, only that part of the instructions and data which is required to be handled at that point is taken into the CPU memory. So what I am trying to tell you here is, suppose I have 10,000 instructions. The CPU cannot execute all the 10,000 instructions at one time. So what it will do is, it will take the first instruction, send it to the control unit. The control unit will understand what the instruction it is, that is decode the instruction they call it, and then it will give directions to the ALU or the CPU to do whatever necessary action. Now if you see, the control unit is connected to almost every part of the computer, because it is like your office manager or supervisor. What it does is, suppose for example you plug out the keyboard while typing. So this fellow will detect that the keyboard has been plugged out and you will get a message on your screen. Similarly, say for example your main memory, some issue happens, control unit will deal with it. Okay, if there is an error on the secondary drive, the control unit will deal with it. So the control unit basically is like a supervisor controlling everything here. Now main memory is also known as random access memory or volatile memory. We'll be discussing a little more, but just understand a bit about it. The cost of this is much higher than this. This is your hard disk, which is of magnetic media, or there's something new technology called as the solid state drives. Then from this memory, this is within the CPU, there is a small amount of memory called as a register memory for doing all the processing the instructions in this memory. So the secondary storage and the main memory are referred to as the memory units. Input units are keyboards, mouse, and so on. Output units are printers and so on. So your CPU consists of the control unit, arithmetic and logic unit, and the central processing unit. So this is an important block diagram, and more than likely you will end up getting a question to be asked sometime during your exam with the block diagram. Explain the functionality or working of a computer. Functionality means how does a computer really work? That's what you mean by functionality. So I hope this clarified your understanding about what is the architecture or block diagram of a computer. Do understand we are doing it at a very high level. As you go up higher standards in computer science, each of them itself will end up being multiple chapters for you to study.